Before we begin the episode, I would like to thank our sponsor, Field Queens, an Irish-owned GAA and leisurewear brand created by two inter-county players, Una White and Orla Duff. The girls have put aside their inter-county rivalries to create Ireland's first ever GAA glove specifically designed and tailored fit to the female hand. Field Queens are empowering future generations and offer a 15% team discount on gloves and are proud to be stocked in 10 stores nationwide. Having only started this venture in 2021, they have steadily grown their product line to include their original Empower gloves, bobble hats, snoods and water bottles. They've also just announced their brand new blackout glove, which are now available to buy on their website fieldqueens.ie. You can find out more information on their social media at Field Queens, which will be linked in the description box below. Welcome back to the Sideline Live podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. On episode 88, I'm delighted to be joined by Down Senior Ladies footballer and Glentoran captain Jessica Foy. Earlier this year, Jessica made history becoming the first female professional soccer player in Northern Ireland, and since our chat has also been named in Division 3 Lidl National League Team of the Year. I hope you enjoy. Hi Jessica, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you very much, thanks for having me.
Before we get into everything, would you mind giving yourself an elevator pitch to the listeners who might not know who you
are? Jessica Foy, captain of Glentoran Football Club and Down Senior Ladies Gaelic player.
Brilliant. So growing up for you, International Women's Day was last week. Who were your role models and early influences?
I don't know if I had maybe a sporting influence. I think that community aspect of football was really prevalent in my early years. Going to the Gaelic club with my family, and obviously my mum was a massive role model in bringing us along to the Gaelic club and being able to play alongside my sisters was fantastic for me. And I really loved that family aspect of sport. And then I kind of got into soccer a wee bit later. And probably growing up then, you look at the likes of Kelly Bailey, who played my position, who's an absolute legend at Glentoran Football Club and for Northern Ireland women. So for me, that was probably someone I aspired to be. But in terms of Gaelic, you went to the All-Ireland finals, and at the time, Cork were the team to beat. And you just looked at them, you thought, flip, one day I'd love to be here and to play. And probably just looking at them and how they played was just incredible.
Yeah, those teams in Cork back then, not to discredit the current Cork team, but like you look at the paper, who the players are on, it's just like legends of the game on one pitch together. It's just nearly a cheat code, like.
Absolutely. I think, we're very blessed to be able to witness so many great players on the same team at one time. I don't know if that'll ever maybe, happen again, because it was unbelievable to watch.
They've nearly cursed the game. It's when you win one, you have to win 5 in a row. You have to do the Cork on it, like.
Absolutely. It really does put the pressure on the teams that, one isn't enough anymore. You kind of have to be able to replicate it time and time again.
Absolutely. You mentioned there picking up soccer at kind of a later age. Describe what the decision was to go to try soccer. Sorry, I call it soccer. You probably call it football and Gaelic football.
Yeah, well, I played Gaelic football, from a very young age, from about 5 or 6. Just going up to the local club and played it within school. And then soccer was always something that you played at lunch or break time, and never really took too seriously. And then it was only when I went to secondary school, and I was just playing for the school team. It was just kind of a team that all the Gaelic players were thrown onto to give it a bash and to put out a team. But I think then there was a couple of scouts came along and asked would I be willing to go along to Glentoran. And at this stage I was maybe like 14, 15, so it was quite late. But something that I always loved, that I grew up supporting Man United, so I always did follow football. I just never really gave it a go playing it, but was delighted to go along and actually be able to play. And that success of club football quickly turned into international success, playing under 17, under 19, and it kind of really snowballed before I kind of really had time to think about it. Rather than a big decision, it was just like one thing hopped into the next, into another, and all of a sudden here we are a couple of years later, and you're captain in the club. But definitely a good decision that I made.
You're a defender now, but I know in a school final you scored 4 goals, including a cracking free kick into the top corner or something. Can you talk us through that? I presume you meant that goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know what happened when we played in the school team. They seemed to like to play me a bit more of a forward role. If I said it now, I think everyone would be like, "Not a chance. Get back to the defence." But yeah, just whenever you're playing in school, I think you have a lot more confidence when you're playing in school or something. Um, and it was really tight, the game. It was 1-0, one each, 2-1, 2 each. I ended up 3 each, and it went the extra time, and it was a free kick. And I just remember somebody coming up and saying to me, you have to score this, otherwise it's going to penalties. And I was like,
No
right,
pressure, and then
okay. But yeah, it's still, the memory still lives on. I still have old teachers, when you bump into them, still talk about it. So it's a really nice memory to still have.
that's gas. Did you play much underage for down at all at kind of the underage ranks, under 14, 16 minor?
Yeah, I played the whole way up, from under 14, right up to senior. I think we worked out this year. It's my 11th year at senior football, which I know for only being 26, you're thinking maybe it's time to hang up the boots. But yeah, I just can't believe how quickly it kind of went in. I think 2011 was my first the debut. So yeah, incredible to have the opportunity to go at this stage.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. At what point in Gaelic football and soccer does hard work come in with passion for the sport? Obviously, you love sport. You mentioned that there, and you're obviously pursuing it now. So obviously, you do have that love. But at what point does hard work start to come into those two sports, and what age was that?
Yeah, I think whenever I was first brought up into the senior teams, it was purely on talent, and I think very quickly I came to realise, well, there's actually 30 other players here that are very talented. So either you're going to have to work for your place, or else there's another guy that can quickly come in, and replace you very very easily. Um, and I think that was a lesson I learned, very early on. Underage, it's quite easy to stand out, and then once you get to that senior level, you really do have to fight for your position. If you start in one week, you're definitely not guaranteed it the next week. So I think, around the age of about 18, 19, when maybe one squad you're maybe left out of, you're starting to think, right, okay, I really need to start knuckling down here, and putting the work in, week out. And um, yeah, I think that was probably the first time I kind of realised that you have to.
Adult football is kind of like business, or like cutthroat. It's you're in one week, you might be out the next, so it's kind of like you're always on your toes. Whereas underage, yes, it is that little bit, but it's just amplified more at that adult level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the year we won the All Ireland Sound 2014, I've probably never, it was such a rewarding year, but it was an absolutely cutthroat. If you weren't pulling your weight, that was you out of the team. On the Sunday, and I think that was probably our best year, and that everyone was pushing. And that was probably why we were so successful. So there obviously is some, negative sides to that, where some people might think, well, that's not for me. Thanks very much. But definitely that year was probably where, that was amplified, and we were most successful with it.
Mm-hmm. For any younger players listening, it's kind of become a staple question on the podcast. Is there any particular underrated skill that we're not looking at as players or as coaches that you just recognise there's a big gap here with younger players, that they're not focusing on X or Y?
Um, I don't know if there's one skill that we're maybe not focusing on, but one I don't think is used enough. It's probably coming to the game a wee bit more now. Is being able to use both hands and both feet. I remember I was very, very fortunate that my underage coach, senior coach at club level for many years, Alec McGoran, it didn't matter, how much of a session you gave your right hand, because you gave the equal amount to your left hand, and same with your right foot and left foot. All the drills were set up and catered for both feet, that you had to use both 50% of each session. So I think, that has to be encouraged, that we're not, asking kids to pick a dominant hand or a dominant foot, growing up. You have to start to use both, because I think that's the wee small percentages and the wee small margins that are going to make the difference whenever you get the adult football.
I think it's now the game is nearly gone, or already got to the point where when you get to senior county football at any group, junior, intermediate, senior, you kind of have to have both hands and both feet, because you're going to be cornered either way, with the scouting, with players watching you, with how good the game has got. There is no kind of hiding spot for players anymore with one side.
Absolutely, you've got the video analysis now of every game, and before you go out to play a team, every player on the other team's been analysed, right down to the final margins. So you know everything about that player. So it's so important that you've got something in your locker that you can kind of switch it up with. create a wee bit of, challenge for the opposition.
What's the best piece of advice you've got from a coach or from a player in either sport? Is there anything particular that stands out for you that you've kind of always gone back to or reflected on?
I don't know, maybe as I've got older, I maybe would have let the temperament of the game maybe get to me. But they say in fire in the belly, ice in the head. Just keeping it cool regardless of what way the match is going. And I think that's probably something that I've kind of matured with as I've gotten older. And you have to start letting the football do the talking. Rather than getting involved, in what way the game's going or referees' decisions or opposition winding you up, because it's part and parcel of the game. It's going to happen now, but it's how you react to it and creating the correct response.
Yeah, that's a good point. For any younger listeners that are trying to balance multiple sports, how do you balance both? How did you balance both at underage? I think kids are under a lot of pressure these days with all of the underage teams they're on. They're probably playing for the team above their age group. They might be involved in intercounty or Irish or Northern Irish panels, and then they've got skill teams. And then when you're a good player, you're not just a good player in one team, you're going to be a good player in every team. And chances are you're going to be a good player in multiple sports. How do you balance that as a teenager when you've got so much else going on as well with social life and school work and everything else?
Yeah, it's definitely a major challenge, particularly for girls as well, who, their social aspect is outside of sport as well as inside of sport. I think, the communication with the coaches has to be good, as in, it is the coach's responsibility to look after their players, but sometimes you have to let them know that I've got ABC going on, and I maybe played a school match today, maybe if I give training a miss tonight, I'll come up and show my face, but would that be okay? And I think that was one thing I learned, that it's totally okay to say to a coach, I'm not feeling it tonight, I'm absolutely burnt out. And I remember last year or the year before, even at senior level, I phoned up my county coach and I just said to her, I was like, I'm maxed out at the minute, would you mind if I just gave the session a miss? And she was absolutely fine with it. She said, stay at home, take a night to yourself, refresh, and, come back tomorrow, come back on Saturday, because you're better coming back at 100% than you are continuously doing, 10 and 20% throughout the week. So I think, it's having that confidence within yourself to say, I need to take a break here, I need to take a step back, and, speaking to your coaches and letting them know what you do have going on. But, it definitely is doable, especially if it's something that you're passionate about. It'll never feel like it's a chore, going out to training or going out to matches. So definitely, if it's something that you love, you'll always find time and make time for it.
How do you switch off away from sport? Do you like kind of sit down and watch Netflix? Can you switch off though at the same time? Is it just this all-encompassing mentality, or can you find you can just kind of...
Most people said to me, you don't ever sit down, and probably my mental break from football and Gaelic would be going to CrossFit, so going to the gym. And I just really love it because everything that I play is team sport. So whenever I go up to the CrossFit, it just seems to be me competing against myself. And just being able to lift a wee bit of weights and, having that community aspect. And, that's something that I really love doing in my pastime. But, if I'm not exercising, I do love going to the cinema whenever I make time. So the cinema would definitely be up there.
I love that. What do you do to switch off? CrossFit. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And do you get much time to switch off at all? Do you get much time to actually to go to the cinema every once in a while? Is it?
Yeah, I seem at the minute to have a Saturday off, which is nice. So you kind of get a day to kind of rejuvenate, chill out, and then go to the movies or anything on a Saturday night, go out for dinner. That kind of sets you up for the week ahead, which it's nice. You do kind of need that break mentally. Just to kind of switch off from competitiveness for a wee while anyway.
Totally. How do you manage your time? Is there any particular advice or tips you have, or a method that you use to kind of plan your week and fill in the different things you have to do? Because obviously you're with two teams to a high level and you've got work as well. So is there any advice or method that you use that you find really effective?
Yeah, well, I think whenever I was younger, I always kind of went for the head in the sand, pretend it's all not happening around me, and at one point I'm going to have to let a coach. I can't make it tonight because I've got 3 different sessions on in one night. I find that probably caused more anxiety on my behalf than it did to anybody else. So I think, it's important to kind of look what you've got in the week ahead or the next 2-3 weeks and start to prioritise, well, I've got a county game coming up on Sunday. I'll go to their sessions this week, and I don't have another one for another 2 weeks, so I can maybe take the next week off or the next session off, and be able to give my full time to football that way. So, definitely just have a look ahead, prioritise, but don't be afraid to let people know and give them the heads up. But I can't actually make this one, and here's why. And thankfully, this year it just seems to have worked out well for me that I don't really have very many clashes, training times and training nights. So I haven't had very many difficult conversations, but I definitely know previously, the head in the sand is not a good method to go down.
Very good. Is there any particular recovery methods you find useful in terms of all the training and try to prevent injury and even just trying to prevent burnout? Is there anything mentally that you can do to kind of just kind of switch off when you're moving to one sport to the other? Does it ever get draining, or is there any particular way you kind of keep yourself fresh and keep going?
Yeah, I suppose, definitely, like I said, giving yourself a day off, a rest day where, you're doing nothing, particularly strenuous. And it's very important that you're looking after yourself. And I don't think, as a young child, we really appreciated the use of the gym as much, and, improving your mobility and stretching. And I think that's one thing that, as I've got older, it's touch wood has been, very helpful for me in terms of not getting injured, just, maintaining your body, and your fitness. But yeah, I just think mentally, you always you have to offer yourself, a day off at least, throughout the week. And then, I think, whenever my football season finishes, county pre-season seems to, start back up. But you have to say to them, I need a month here, just to kind of take yourself completely away from sport, and to really kind of get a life back again, even for a month. And then you kind of have that enthusiasm to kind of get back into it. And, because once you start to lose, the enjoyment for it, and it starts to feel more like a chore, there's of your own time as well as everybody else's.
You can get the month off to go do CrossFit, is
Yeah.
it? At any point in your career, did anyone kind of put the choice to you? You have to choose one or the other. Was that was that ever brought to your attention? Because I know other players in multiple different sports have had that issue, and I think it's kind of not an old school mentality, but the research has kind of come out that don't specialise early. There's so many elite athletes that speak about how they just played multiple sports. Like even the Super Bowl last year, there was a brilliant stat. I think 50% of them played 2 or more sports that were in the Super Bowl. So it wasn't just American football. Was that choice ever brought up to you as a player at all?
I think, definitely when you were younger, when you had probably, like you said, more old school style coaches training you, that kind of made you, feel the pressure of choosing one over the other. But, I think it's more common now that athletes are dual athletes, and they play, multiple sports. And, coaches need to see that as a benefit too, that, that they are playing 2 sports, and, there's a lot of crossovers between the 2 sports. But you have to look at the likes of Caroline O'Hanlon, for Armagh, playing netball at such a high standard, and Gaelic football, and then maintaining a career. She's an absolute inspiration. So I haven't seen any downside to being a dual athlete. So I think coaches need to be aware that, you're just really punishing the player more than anything else. Yeah, I definitely see the benefit of playing too anyway.
Yeah, that's a great point about Caroline. Aside from the physical skill of, let's say, kicking, obviously because there's huge crossover there between Gaelic football and soccer, is there any particular crossover and other elements that you see as a benefit to having both? Is there anything that you just realised, oh, this is brilliant in soccer because I've played Gaelic, or in Gaelic, oh, this is brilliant because I've done this in soccer? Is there anything for you that kind of stands out in either sport?
Yeah, well, like you said, there's the physical aspect of it too. It's kind of well known that, if a Gaelic player's coming to soccer, there's that increased physicality. But, for me, I play 2 completely different positions. I play in the forward line, Gaelic, and I play, defensively in soccer. But, I've really seen the benefit in recent years of even being able to read, because I wouldn't say I'm naturally gifted in terms of being able to read, a soccer pitch, or being able to read different plays. But I've definitely tried to take bits from, Gaelic, and, how I would attack, and, through balls, or, diagonal balls from there. And then because I'm able to see the whole pitch as a defender, I'm trying to see wee pictures that I've maybe used within the Gaelic football, and bring it across into soccer. So I definitely do think, in terms of styles of play and, attack and play, I've definitely tried to implement some crossovers there.
Okay, very good. The 2014 All Ireland, you mentioned it there. What's it like being in an environment like that where high performance is demanded by everybody and, you get that overwhelming success at the end? Can you describe what it takes to win an All Ireland?
Uh, I've always said, and I'll probably forever say it, I think that was probably one of the most challenging years, I've ever had, physically, mentally, in every single way. The demands of going to training in Newry 4 times a week, was tough, and then obviously the demand to keep your place within the team, equally was just as challenging. But I think it's definitely something that the reward at the end of it, was very worthwhile.
Do you find you're motivated more by success or fear of failure? What would be your take there?
I think probably I think it has to be success. I think if you have this fear of failure, you're already limiting yourself in what you can do. Success has to be your main goal. We've always said that if you're already thinking about failure, you're already thinking negatively. You always just have to think of positive thoughts, and success is your goal, and how can I get there?
When you reach both levels in both sports, like it's such a high level, is it more mental or physical, the game? What is it for you?
Um, but I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. The physical demands, the game is getting so physical in terms of athletic ability. Everyone has really raised their standards in terms of F&C and runs within the pitch as well. Outside of training. So the game's transformed massively there. But mentally, I think that's what gives you the edge. And you've been in environments before where the mental aspect hasn't been there, and we haven't been mentally strong. And once you maybe have one defeat or one loss or one bad performance, you have that snowball effect where nobody's really mentally strong enough to kind of pull the team together and pull you through. Where now you have to see setback is the first step to success and the first step to going forward. So I definitely think now the psychology is a massive part of the game, and it's so important to have we small mini goals in mind to kind of to get to the greater ones.
Mm-hmm. How have you evolved as a player over the last 11 years at Down and during your whole career? What's been the biggest evolution for you, do you think?
Um, I don't know. I know it's saying I've definitely matured. As I've gotten older, but obviously the styles of play have completely changed. I think I definitely took more risks whenever I was younger, coming up throughout the teams. Some would say I was very cocky. Some would still say but I definitely think now in terms of performances, it's definitely matured. But I understand the importance now of looking after your body, and not running it into the ground and not completely burning yourself out. Probably something that I wish people had told me before. I think going back to those years around 2012, 13, 14, 15, I was just in a complete state of burnout in terms of what I was putting myself through mentally and physically. So I've definitely learned to cope with it a lot better now.
What are those early signs that you recognise now from going through those stages of burnout that you're now able to prevent that? When do you kind of realise that you might be kind of touching on that side of burnout, and when can you say I need to stop here?
Yeah, I think it is when training starts to become a challenge where you're not really looking forward to going, and you really are having to have a chat with yourself before you go, to get in the car to drive to training. And it was whenever physical exercise was starting to hurt, as in like this is a real challenge for my body to be here, and I'm just sore, and you're really not giving yourself to anybody at that point. So I think now it's important to recognise that you need a break, or it's okay to go down and watch for a session, or to take a night off just to refresh, and to be able to go again. This year, I'll openly say Ronan, would text me in October to come back to the county team, and I said to him, I can't mentally come back until January. Like I need that 2 months away from county football before I come back. Otherwise, there would have been no point me being there, because I knew I wasn't ready to come back. I knew mentally, if I had went back, the rest of the year would have dragged in. But he's very good in that. I come back in January and I'm fresh and ready to go, and looking forward to the season ahead.
Mm-hmm. I know you get up at 5:30 a.m. according to an article online. What gets you out of bed in the morning, like in a tough session is coming up, and oh geez, I'm going to be running here, dogged? Is it that enjoyment part for you, where you realise, I'm in this for the fun of it? I really enjoy what I do, or what kind of gets you out of bed in those days?
CrossFit. But yeah, no. I'm very routine to that. I really like to know how my day is going to be planned out. And I like knowing that I'm getting up at that time, and I've got a day at work ahead. And teaching kids, and then I'm go home and get my dinner and head out to training. And when you're the first week or two back, you're obviously going to be a wee bit tired from it, just as your body kind of adapts. But once you're into that routine of things, again, like I say, if you weren't loving it, you wouldn't be there and you wouldn't be doing it. I think that thrill of the success that could happen, at the end goal is probably what keeps you going. So year after year, we haven't won an All Ireland from 2014, and you're still showing up every year thinking, this year we're going to push on, this year we're going to push on, and it's that goal that you have, within yourself individually and within the team that keeps you going each year. And hopefully, before I retire, we'll achieve it again.
What do you think is your biggest strength in your game? Is there anything particular that in your mind stands out for you? And I'm always interested to hear the player's perspective, because if I'm watching you, I might pick something different. So what would you see as your biggest strength?
Ooh, well, as a forward, I think shooting, but I think that has to be a given for me as a forward. It has to be one of your strengths, but probably one of my strengths, I would say personally, without sounding too cocky, would be the reading of the game, and seeing different parts of play, and I would see the switch ball or the through ball, and being able to execute that. With my kicking, would probably be one of my strengths, and something that I've probably tried to utilize more. As I've got older, when I was younger, I probably tried to run the ball a wee bit more, but now I'm kind of seeing things. I'm seeing different movements, and being able to play an early ball through. I definitely think it's something I've got a lot better at.
As a forward, and I'm a forward as well, although I play junior club football, so I won't be comparing myself to you. But what do you think about the new kind of, it's not an argument, but the kind of campaign for more physicality in terms of the tackling? People are advocating to bring in the shoulder into ladies football. What would you make of that?
I'm kind of on the fence with it, to be honest. I can see why people want it in the game, because essentially you could say it's already there. There's a strong physicality already present within the game, and to be honest, it probably just depends on the referee and what you're able to get away with and what you're not able to get away with. Some referees are absolutely zero contact, and I find that frustrating, that you're here to play sport, and it's obviously going to get a wee bit physical, and they're not allowing any of it. But I don't see any negative effects. Bringing in more physicality to the game is, like I said, strength and conditioning is getting a lot better. Women are progressing more and more within sport in terms of increasing their S&C. So I definitely think, I would definitely be one that would be definitely for it anyway.
Yeah, I think it's trying to bring in the flow to the game. Sometimes I find with ladies' game, and I played a club game the other week, and I'm not giving out about referees. It's in the rule book, but it's like there's no flow. There's absolutely no flow to the game, because the whistle's being blown every 2 minutes, because the physicality is there. We can play, we can be physical. But if you look at, like, a great example, I thought, was the senior final last year at Meath in Dublin. There was a great flow to the game. Things were let go. I think that needs to come into the game more, even for people who don't think there should be shouldering. Just give a bit more flow. We're not looking to start beating the head off everyone else. Just give it a bit of flow that we're all looking for as players.
No, absolutely. It is frustrating, because some teams go out and use that as a strength in terms of breaking up the play, and tactical fouls, as they say, to really slow down the game. And I definitely think the Meath and Dublin game was an absolute spectacle for letting the game flow, and for spectators alone to watch, it was unbelievable. But I'm sure the play in that was really enjoyable too.
Can you sit down and relax and watch a game, or are you constantly watching, what is she doing, how do they do this, what's that decision there?
Yeah, no, you definitely enjoy it. But it's definitely, you're always looking at other players to see, well, what are their strengths, what are they doing well here, and how did they do that. But it's definitely love watching. An unbelievable game of football. I think everyone involved in sport does.
Yeah. Do you have any particular pre-game routine? Are you superstitious? Superstitious? I'm stumbling over my words there.
No, I don't really have any superstitions. I think it seems I've always seemed to put my left foot on before my right because I'm left-footed. And I've kind of just stuck with it. But no, I don't really have any superstitions. We just always have. It's called like a no-go. The
Oh
cafe.
yeah.
Always have one of them before a game. Now, I don't know if it's because I'm older and I need a wee bit more of a kickstart before I get going. But yeah, I don't really have any real routines or anything that I kind of go through ritually.
Okay, very good. Your name popped up in the news over Twitter earlier in the year. Talk us through becoming the first professional female player in Northern Ireland. That's a huge achievement. What did that mean for you as a player? And to be the first is it's pretty spectacular, really.
Yeah, of course. I think it was a massive honour, when it first came about. It wasn't a total shock as in where we got to in terms of professionalism, but we had been talking about it for, the past 2-3 years. And I didn't really expect us to get there so soon. And I know we had been putting the wee stepping stones in place to get us here, but it was able to come about, before Christmas. We were able to sign all the contracts, and get it released to the media, after Christmas time. So, for me personally, and for my family, it was a massive, massive honour to be one of the first to sign a professional contract. But it just goes to show, not only in football, but where women in sport, has come within the country. That we're really pushing us on and we're really putting ourselves, on the map. And it's come about because of all the female athletes that have went before. They've worked hard to get us to this place. And they've put on a fantastic game that now people want to get involved and they want to sponsor, and the men's clubs now want to give you their backing. So it's an absolute credit to everyone involved to get us to this place where people are talking about women's football.
Absolutely, there has been a huge shift. It's brilliant to see. I'd say as a player, it's amazing to see that support that maybe wasn't there 10 years ago. I know earlier today I was speaking with Denise Masterton and we were saying how they were going through so many years where they couldn't even get managers. There was 8 players down training, whereas now there's you just sign a professional contract. The WGPA and now is formed with the GPA. Like the game and sport, as you say, in Ireland has just evolved so quickly in the last 10 years. That must be huge for you as a player to realise that people are now supporting us and giving us that support that we deserve because we put in so much work and as much work as the men.
Yeah, I think women are now getting the just reward for the work that they're putting in. Previously, females playing sport, it was just for the love of it, and that's still there. But now, they're being rewarded for it, be it financially, be it opportunities, access to facilities. Everything that I would say, men maybe took for granted whenever they turned up to play for a team. Women are now on a level playing field, which is fantastic. Even the GAA and the LGFA coming underneath the one umbrella now, is fantastic. And I've said before, it was always seemed to be women, preaching for equality within sport. But recently, the likes of Conor Myler coming out and speaking, we've now got that male support as well behind women's sport. So, it's evolved massively over the last 10 years in terms of, access and opportunities and funding. It's fantastic. And it's a very, very exciting time for any young girl growing up to get involved in sport, because there's been several players, in all sports that have went before them that have paved the way to get us to where we are now. So, I would definitely love to be 14, 15 again, coming through the ranks, with the opportunities that young females are going to have now. It's just fantastic.
Absolutely. Obviously, Glentoran have been so supportive of your GAA career. How important was it for you to ensure that there was a clause there in the contract that you could still play Gaelic football?
Massive for me. I've always played Gaelic football, and I've always just played it because I loved it, and I'm so passionate about it. And I probably wouldn't be me without it. And I think they recognise that it's so important to me, and to be able to do it so many years and be able to balance both of them. I didn't see any reason why now. I still wouldn't be able to balance the two of them. But sport first and foremost, you play it because you love it and you're passionate about it, especially as a female. And I think it was really, really important, that I was still able to do both.
Has ladies football gotten to that professional level yet without paying players? And do you think you see a day eventually where players are paid in the men's and women's game?
Uh, in terms of Gaelic football,
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
yeah, I don't know in terms of ever being paid to play. I think it would really take away from the culture of the GAA, and I think that's what is so outstanding about the Gaelic community is that it's just full of everyone across Ireland playing this one sport because they love it and they have a real passion for it, and as much as every other aspect of the sport, I think it's went professional. The only thing that really hasn't went is the payment. But at the minute you're still getting your expenses come back. You're getting your meals now. And there is sponsorship available there. So I don't really see the need for it to go full professional in terms of being paid for it because the access to everything else that is required that you need to get the training after training and your recovery is all provided. So I think right now we're definitely in a very good place, and women's Gaelic is definitely in a fantastic place at the minute.
Mm-hmm. You've had a very successful soccer career. You're named captain of Glentoran. What's it like being a captain? Can you explain sort of the roles and responsibilities to the listeners who might not understand what goes into being a captain, particularly younger players that haven't had exposure to being a captain or being around a captain before?
Yeah, it's definitely a big responsibility. I've been captain for several years now, and it was a massive honour to be firstly asked to be captain of the club. There's several legends that have went before that have captained the club, the likes of Kelly Bailey, to be one of them. But I think, as a captain, taking everything outside of it, the first thing you have to do is lead on the pitch. You have to be the one that shows up the training, that's enthusiastic, that's putting in the hard work. Because, if you're not, nobody else will follow you. And, then on the pitch as well, in terms of matches, you have to be there giving your all, regardless of how a game is going. One thing about Glentoran is our DNA is hard work over everything else. And I think that's why we've been so successful for many years because it's been instilled in us, from Maura and Cheryl, the founders of our club. Regardless of anything, hard work is what you have to implement, and that starts with the captain, and then it filters through to the rest of the team. But it's important to make sure that everyone feels like they're part of the team. It might be something small as just making sure you're mixing within different groups within training. Or organise wee social events. After training, just everyone heading for a hot chocolate or a cup of tea after training, just so you're mixing socially. Or if players frustrated, not getting playing time. Just reaching out, giving them a phone call. Letting them vent or get it off their chest, and you might find by the next day, once they've kind of spoke about it, it's 10 times less than what they made of it the night before. So yeah, I definitely just think it's definitely been an ear for somebody to talk to, and just making sure that you're leading them on and off the pitch.
What would your pre-game or halftime speeches be like? Are they nice and colourful, or are they kind of calm and little quiet word in the ear?
It used to be a wee bit more colourful, but now I think it's so important that we played in Champions League last year, and we're very calm, and I think I said like something like, "Oh, don't worry, this team they weren't very successful last year, and they didn't get to this round, and blah blah blah." It was very calm, and after the game, somebody said to me, "Did you just make all that up to make me feel better? Because it really is." And I was like, "No, it's actually true." But it just seems to be if you do have that nice calm approach, just get everyone settled. I'm very fortunate in that I'm in a very successful team with individuals who are, very driven themselves. So that not much is needing to be said. Just making sure that we're all switched on and focused, and we know what the goal is.
Of all the players you've played with, against, watched, or just from your experience, what are the common attributes of the top players that you've seen? I've kind of asked this question to a number of people, and it's interesting the different answers that come up. Is there any particular pattern you see? Obviously, everyone's very individual. Like, if we compared both of us, we'd obviously have very different attributes, but is there a pattern that you see across top level athletes?
I think it's just the ones that go above and beyond outside of training, to kind of be successful, and to have that mentality that they are the best, and that they will do whatever it takes in order to succeed. And I think across all codes and all sports, I think that really is what sets people out from the crowd, is that when everyone's going home, or the day off, that they're at least doing something a wee bit extra, so that they have that wee extra percentage, whenever they're on the pitch. And it's definitely their mindset too. Mindset can carry you a very long way, and confidence can carry you a very long way. So it's believing that you're the best, and you're the best in your position, and that you belong where you are.
Brilliant. You've a league semi-final coming up with Down this weekend. With Down, what are the goals for this year? Where do you see this team going and progressing over this season and the next couple of seasons?
Yeah, well, we've got a new management in this year with Ronan McCartan. I don't ever want to say, this year we'll not look forward to an Ulster and All Ireland, because I think, everyone's goal is to always, challenge for either of those. But we're very well aware that with a new management in place and a new style of play, it might take a season or two for that to really come into full effect. And in order to kind of, get to where we want to be. But we've been in Division 3 a very long time now. And I think we really need to start pushing and challenging to get up into Division 2. And that does start with Sunday in the semi-final. It's been a long time since we've been in the semi-final. I think we were maybe in contention for one in 2020 whenever COVID hit, and then cancelled. But before that, I think maybe it was 2014, 2013, before we've been in one before. So we've earned the right to be there on Sunday. So I think it's a knockout now, and you have to go to push on. We know it's going to be a very, very challenging game from Wexford. Played them last year. In the All Ireland, we know it's a tough outfit, a tough ask, but we know now within ourselves it has to be a goal to get out of Division 3. If it doesn't happen this year, next year it really has to be a goal that we're pushing for.
What's it like watching Meath go on that run to jump from intermediate to senior? Does it give yourselves a new kind of perspective on, anything can really happen here? And I don't mean that kind of dissing what yous are doing. I just mean it was such a different approach. Like most teams would be worrying about maybe if going senior getting relegated again, but to see them go on and not only compete but win the All Ireland and making that jump, what does that mean for a county like yourselves, and for all other counties, to see a team make that jump and win?
Yeah, I think what Meath did was incredible. In the manner of how they played for the year that they were in senior was incredible. It wasn't by luck by any means that they kept pushing on and kept challenging. And we have to take hope from that, and that we played them the year before they won intermediate, and we beat them in the league, and then the year that they went on to win intermediate, I think they beat us by 2 points in the group stages. So we were close and we were challenging, and then to watch them go on and then to really push on the next level whenever they went up into senior, it does show that it is possible. And I think like you say, most teams have this fear when they win the senior. Okay, let's just not get relegated, or let's not get beat by 10 points here. But their mindset was very clear that they were challenging, and they were as good as any other outfit that was being put out in front of them on a Sunday. And to go on to take it, from Dublin, who are full of confidence, just goes to show, how confident and their mindset was, to go on and to push on and to win it. So I think, any small county just needs to realise that the work has to be put in, behind the scenes for months and years, to really push on, but it is possible.
What's been the biggest lesson you've learned from sport, Jessica, across either sport, across your whole career? Is there any particular standout, or maybe one or two things you've just learned from your time in sport?
I think every setback's temporary, and that if someone tells you, right now you're not the player that we're needing, or you're not just fitting into the team right now, it's temporary. You have to work hard to get back, and push on and challenge for your place. And it's important not to sit, in a, I don't want to say dark place, because it's not that bad, but that self-pity of, well, the coach didn't pick me, or she said this or he said that. Well, the coach is only going to put out the best team, so you have to make sure that you are the best, put yourself in contention to be in the team. So I think realizing that it's your own responsibility, to put yourself back in, I think was probably my biggest lesson.
That's actually come up a lot in the podcast about kind of not being selected, and it doesn't mean you're a bad player. It just might mean you don't fit the system, or you might not fit what the coach is looking for. So don't get too discouraged, because there might be an opportunity next year. We've seen it across multiple counties and sports where players are dropped one year and brought in and nearly get a starting position in this really important role. So it's not like it's a great quote I got from somebody: failure is not a full stop, it's a comma. And I think that's really important to remember as sports people, because it's so cutthroat. You might not be selected for Sunday, doesn't mean you're not a good player, but you need to be ready in 2 weeks' time for the next game.
Yeah, I think, one of the big quotes I kind of look at was, I think it's Michael Jordan said it, I failed so many times and that's why I'm successful. And that's definitely something that you have to look at. Well, I have to learn from this, and I have to, not be too disheartened, and, find out what it is. Well, what is it that you think that I'm not really, being successful with, or how can I improve? And, it's wanting to improve. I think that's the most important thing, of wanting to get better. And how much do you actually want to be in the team? Do you want to complain about not being in the team, or do you actually want to, make sure that you're in it the next time it comes about? So I think that's so important, that, you're trying to better yourself constantly. But, sometimes it is, you just don't fit into the system. And, that's happened before too, where, well, we're playing this system for the next 2 games, but, see that third game, there's an opportunity there, so make sure you're ready, that kind of way. So, just making sure that you're best prepared as you possibly can be. And done everything within your control, then, sometimes it's just personal preference of a coach, and it's not reflective of you.
Exactly. Out of interest, would you rather get the winning score or make the winning block? As a forward, what's your answer there?
I'm always going to say the winning score.
Nice big loopy point.
Yeah, I'll take anything. But yeah, no, even when we're training and all, I'll always say to someone, go and be the match winner. Do you want to be the match winner tonight? And I think it's something that I love. Just scoring the winning goal or the winning point.
I've had a couple of dual stars on, one of them being Chief O'Shea from Kerry. Could you pick a sport? Do you prefer Gaelic or soccer? Can you pick it, or is it just every day is different?
You know what? Probably previously I probably would have said Gaelic. And I don't know why. I just always had a preference to it. But now, the last couple of years, I can't really decide between them. They're both, to me, so very different. And one, like soccer, I have to work very hard at to stay within a team. It's just not something that probably came as natural as what Gaelic did. But I definitely love it equally as much now as Gaelic football.
Do you find it kind of refreshing, or kind of mentally kind of keeps you in tune when you're jumping between 2 different sports, that you have to kind of, you're not on your toes is the wrong word, but it's like it just kind of keeps you a little bit fresh, moving between different sports, different setups, different teams?
Yeah, I do think, maybe that tedium doesn't set in because, you're kind of going between the 2 different sports, and being challenged completely differently between the 2 different teams. But, I think it's nice and it's fresh that, one night, Monday you'll be at soccer and Tuesday you'll be at Gaelic football, and it's nice to have that variety within your week.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to move on to the sideline 7. It's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode. Question 1, what is your favourite quote?
I think definitely that Michael Jordan one. I've failed many times, but that's why I'm successful.
Yeah. Have you watched The Last Dance?
Unbelievable.
Mental. I have to do a podcast just on that.
Yeah.
Question 2, what's the best sporting event you've been to? And you can pick one as a fan and one as a player.
Well, as a player, it'd be the All Ireland. Playing in the All Ireland. Well, they'll do that for Gaelic, and then in football we played Holland in the Euro qualifiers. They sold out the PSV stadium. Incredible. And then as a spectator, I've got 2. I've got the World Cup final between USA and Holland in the Women's World Cup final. And
wow.
It was unbelievable. Seeing the USA in real life was just something else I always loved. And then randomly Wimbledon. So went to Wimbledon a couple of years ago, and we were just walking past, and the security guy says, if you just pop into that wee practice court on the left there, wait 5 minutes, you'll see why. And me and my sister were the only ones there, and next thing Serena Williams walks out to warm up, Oh, it was unbelievable.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, so that experience was incredible. She had an absolute army of people coming with her to help her warm up. It was insane.
That is crazy. Because
Yeah,
I've seen the US women's team play. I saw them in the World Cup in 2019. Amazing. But Serena Williams in Wimbledon.
yeah,
Wow.
unbelievable. In person, it's just phenomenal unit is the only way to describe her.
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible. And then I got to watch Venus's game as well. So yeah,
Class.
an experience I love.
I'll have to add that to my list. Question 3. What's been the biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
I think probably in 2014 being in and out of the team when we were challenged for the All Ireland was probably the biggest challenge I've had and setback. But then, same goes with football, soccer, in and out of the international squad, being in the squad essentially, but not, within the starting team. And I think, it's so important that, maybe younger, it was very hard to overcome, but now, realizing, well, everything's in my control here as to how I react. And it will only benefit me if I have a positive reaction, and it will only inhibit me if I have a negative one. So, it was completely within my control how I wanted to react to both those situations.
Brilliant. Kind of on the flip side then, what's been your biggest achievement on or off the pitch in either sport?
Um, well, I think, for Gaelic has to be winning the Ulster and All Ireland. Hopefully that's something that I'm going to replicate again, before I retire. And then within soccer, I think it was getting an international cap. I've played nearly 30 times for Northern Ireland, which, for me is an incredible achievement for something that I started so late. So yeah, they're probably two of my biggest achievements that I'm most proud of.
Brilliant. Looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Um, Enjoy it a bit more. Don't be too afraid to tell people that you're feeling it and you're feeling a wee bit burnt out, so you maybe need a rest. At 18, you probably thought that, you were so important to everyone that you had to be there at every stage, where, if you just let people know that, I need a night off, or I need a day or a weekend here, it will only benefit you in the long run.
Brilliant. Who would be your dream dinner guest and why? You can open up the table to a few people if you want.
I'm really going to let myself down here, but my absolute love is One Direction. If I could get a dinner table with One Direction, even just Harry Styles for one night, that would be my absolute dream. And then if I could add anyone else to it, it would be Cristiano Ronaldo.
Okay, very good. What are we having at dinner? Are you cooking? Are we getting a takeaway? What do you think?
Definitely thinking pizza, takeaway pizza.
Okay, brilliant. Final question before I let you go. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
I think this one would maybe be the unexpected. I think a lot of things have maybe changed and transformed within women's sport, and I think I'm very honoured to be a part of that. It's something that I maybe didn't anticipate was happening any time in my career. But all good and positive vibes. But definitely the unexpected.
Brilliant. Jessica, thanks so much for joining the podcast. The very best of luck with everything soccer, Gaelic, on and off the pitch. And thanks again for coming on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
A massive thank you to Jessica for joining me on the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed our chat. I just want to wish her the very best of luck with everything both on and off the field. I'll be sure to leave all of her social media links in the description box below. If you are enjoying the podcast, I really appreciate if you leave a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as it does help the show grow. Big thank you to Phil Greens for sponsoring the episode and to you for listening.